Thank you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, 3IE and CGD. It's an honor to be here. And to be honest, I think it's very adequate that I'm here for two reasons. One is that I do care deeply about development effectiveness. And we know, I mean, not only from the working group, that change comes from the leadership, from incentives, from models, from giving the right approach from the top. So this is where I want to be. The other hand, it's also true that a lot has been experienced. There's a lot to learn. So we have now a panel that will teach us. I don't plan to come with all the answers. I need to learn from the experience that everybody has come, and it is not a coincidence that a lot of the experience, a lot of the studies came from the IDB. So my goal is that the next step will also be led by the IDB, and I hope that we achieve that. I do believe that we need transformation in development effectiveness. I've been saying that it's almost like a cultural transformation. It doesn't mean that nothing has happened. A lot has improved. As you also mentioned, there's a lot of evidence, and now we know more, and that's the result of past efforts. But I do believe that to change things, it's a holistic approach. It's a cultural change. I'm going to give you one of them, just an example, and then I'm going to go over a lot of the issues. We all, multilateral organizations, institutions, NGOs, we talk about dollars, resources. And it's okay, that's the unit of account. We're not going to get rid of dollars. And I come from central bank, so I'm not going to get rid of dollars. But it's generating a bias because we are measured by the amount of resources we provide. So it will not surprise you that you'll measure your success saying this year the IDB lent 12 billion, next year it's going to be 15 billion, and then it's going to be 18 billion. I just gave an interview, and I didn't ask for that, but that was the information that came. IDB 12 billion, but nobody asked what we have done with the 12 billion. And to change that, it's not just changing a phrase in an interview. It's a cultural change. So that's just one example that we need to do. It's not the IDB, this is everybody. So what is the vision? I'm going to separate in 5 plus 1 summary. 6 areas. First, as I mentioned, we need to target final results. We need to look at the indicators of what are we changing. Number of people with housing, out of poverty, how many people we are connecting, how many people have sanitation, what are we doing with their education. We need to be there and not in the amount of dollars we lend. Second, we need to monitor continuously. And that means learning, adjusting, gaining knowledge from the evidence, and that's, as you mentioned, it's everything I say, it's easier to say than done. But we need to go there. To do that, we need a third part, which is governance for effectiveness. We need to signal from the top where we're going, what are the priorities. We need to establish processes of checks and balances. And then the fourth point is related to that. We need an effectiveness-based meritocracy. We need to give the right incentives linked to if we are effective or not. So you're promoted when you finish a project. How many projects you finish? It's not going to be a surprise to you that officers in the field, and again, it's not IDB alone, are motivated to close deals. They have their envelope, they have their goals, they have the targets for the year, and they are kind of, they want to push for projects to close. but we want them to close effective projects that will have an impact. That's quite a difference. 5, effectiveness does not end here in Washington. Effectiveness does not end even in our offices. Effectiveness is related to who is implementing the project, the client, we call it, but are the government authorities who's running the project. The effectiveness, and this is not a minor point, I'm going to deal with all of these issues. Sometimes you have very good ideas, very effective here, but we lack capacity by whoever is in charge of this project. So we need to have joint IDB client effectiveness. And 6 is basically what I mentioned. We need an effectiveness culture. So we need all of the above together with a change. That's the holistic. So let me start with my first point, which is targeting final results, effectiveness targeting. As I mentioned, money, the amount of dollars, is the widely used measure of development. I have nothing against proxies when the proxies work. And the proxies to work, they need to have a stable relationship between dollars and impact. And then you can use the proxy as a real measure of the impact. The way I see it now is that the relationship has broken. We can have a lot of resources spent in places where small impact you have, and you have places where you have small amount generating a large impact. And this difference is now is, I think, the general and not the exception. And in other areas, when the relationship between your proxy, or you can call it intermediate targets, and your final targets have broken, we have gone directly to the final, as difficult as it could be. And again, I'm coming from central banking, and all the inflation targeting is exactly that. Is getting out of intermediate with money aggregates and whatever, and going directly to your outcome, which was inflation. So we need to do it again here. But we do know that this is a very difficult task. Not only because we need to find indicators, we need to find the measure, we need to find what indicators, what is the aggregation of the indicators, but we need to achieve attribution. I mean, are these indicators related to the project? Are they not? Are they related to the region? Commodity boom. I mean, during the commodity boom period, 2003, 2013, I tend to say that everybody went up. All policies was great. All governments did a wonderful job. There was no distinction. And I think just because the tide went up. So how do we distinguish between what we are proposing and what is the general? So all of these are very, very difficult tasks. And if you ask me, it will be easier to just stay with the current proxy. But unfortunately, that will just be fooling ourselves, because it looks to me that we are not allowed anymore, because this is just not giving us the right approach. We need to do, if we're going to target the impact, we need to have ambitious but realistic goals. We need to focus and be selective, and that's something that has been said, including there was an interesting blog by the CGD talking about how important it is to focus, to have the priorities, because in that regard you can actually target the projects that have more impact and not the ones that may have less impact. So from our point of view, we're going to start with an exercise, actually a mandate by our board to start with an exercise of priority. We're going to start with in the institutional strategy. This year, just saying, what are we going to do? What is first? What is later? I say, if everything is a priority, I've been saying this, if everything is a priority, as usually it is, because you want to aggregate not only the needs of staff, but also the needs of the countries. So everybody wants to be involved, everyone wants to be part, which is noble. But if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And for the effectiveness, everything is a priority is damaging. We need to be able to prioritize in a region that needs a lot. So again, easier to say than to do. How are we going to prioritize in regions that need more? But we will need to focus to be more effective. And of course, we will need to use evidence to make the decisions. And I'm fully into looking at how we're going to look at the evidence, how it has been used. The IDB has quite a bit of experience with that. So I'm going to see what exists, how we can improve that. Of course, we'll need digital transformation. We will need to use technology in our favor to look at the evidence. Second point, continuous monitoring. So here, we need to learn and adjust timely based on evidence. So you need to be agile, as I mentioned, with technology, but changes are needed. Nobody's perfect, right? I have one number that says that projects in IDB and other places rarely change. And the IDB is like 90-something%. It starts, it doesn't change. I don't think we are so successful. I mean, in areas and other areas, people, if they get 60% right, they are very happy, right? So we need to be able to change courses, to adapt, to learn. So that's very, very important. And in that regard, failures are as important or even more than successes to effectiveness. And you can imagine, and then I go back to culture, it is not easy to drive a culture of accepting failures, right? We tend, including myself, we tend to say, well, this is my success. This is what we have done. This is where we've done good. But we need to learn. And the failures are as important. So how do you do it? First, you try to bring the failures and freedom and give the incentives. So you bring changes, also the failures, but also have a transparent and open environment, transparency, which is one of the recommendations that I get. You need to somehow have the board, senior management, able to look at them in a very clear way. Finally, continuous monitoring means that you don't finish when the project is launched. You don't even finish when the project terminates, because a lot of the impact of whatever you do may have medium-term and long-term impact. And that's actually what we want, right? We want to have a more permanent impact, change institutions, change the way knowledge is transferred. So why are we going to evaluate just 3, 5 years, even 7 years when it finishes? So there's a long term in our institutions, but we need even longer term. Again, harder, easier to say, harder to do. Governance. We need checks and balances, as you all know, from basic governance. And I'm not telling you any secret. But if we allow the project to be checked continuously by whoever launched the project, and he's the sole evaluator over time, there are, of course, some conflict of interest. Have I done something wrong? Should I show that something didn't go well? So we're going to give them the freedom, we're going to give them incentives, but we need somebody else to look at it at the same time. And that is not exactly the same one that we're going to evaluate like the Independence Office 10 years later. So we need 3 lines of defense. Again, it's not a major secret. The person in front, launching the project, looking at the project, somebody from the organization checking that, and finally, at the end, evaluation. Not a big magic, but basic checks and balances, and we need to put them there. And of course, we need to have the strategy, project evaluation with digitalization. So everything is important. Number 4, effectiveness-based meritocracy. If we continue to promote and give performance based on how much was the envelope, how much you lent, how much you're actually generating in projects, which used to be maybe a good proxy, we will not get the effectiveness that we want. We will not get the impact. Somehow we need to link the promotions and the performance and how much we pay and the KPIs to some measure of impact, of effectiveness. Is it easy? No. I'm already getting into these discussions with the HR and talking about KPIs, indicators, and the indicators come. They are usual indicators, very nice. Where is effectiveness? How do we measure? How do we do it? Again, it's easy to not do it, to continue, but we don't have an option if we really want an impact. And again, I don't need to tell this audience about why is important effectiveness, why is important impact. We need to do so much, climate, social, infrastructure, in this region, that if we don't care about impact, we will not do our job. So again, difficult to do, but we have no option than to get into that and try to if we get 50% of 60% of what I'm putting here, I will be very happy. Of course, I want to get 100%. Client effectiveness. Ownership of the project is essential. So we need to be aligned with the country, and the country needs to be aligned with our impact indicators. Because if the client or if the country wants something else from the loan than what we believe are the impact, it's not going to work, right? We provide the loan, we push for the indicators, they push for something else. At the end of the day, we are misaligned. So we need to be aligned of where we want to go. And here is very important, because usually institutions are very willing to help the countries. There's so much need to help the governments. And the governments have their priorities. And they can come to the institution, to the MDBs, and they say, this is what I want to do, this is my plan. We are very happy to help the governments. We are very happy to be the Banco Amigo, IDB. But I want to be a Banco Amigo with priorities, a Banco Amigo that have impact. And the only way to do it is to help in the places where we agree that those are the priorities. Second, sometimes we do agree and we are aligned, but there's no capacity. So we can fool ourselves that we agree, these are the priorities, this is the project, we approve the project, nothing happens. Why? Because we need execution capacity, we need capacity building, we need to use the technical assistance to actually make the project be effective. And I can tell you that lately, I have been getting a lot of requests for capacity building. Very clear, very transparent. You say, well, we need more of you in the capacity building, which is music to our ears because we believe IDB is a knowledge bank, is a bank based on evidence, and that transferring the knowledge is as or more important than the financing. So capacity building is important, IDB client joint effectiveness is essential. Finally, everything means that we need to change the culture. So effectiveness culture is important. So I said about ultimate goal targeting, effectiveness meritocracy, monitor with checks and balances continuously and even after the project ends, client effectiveness. All of this needs a cultural change. And cultural change, as you know, are not easy, but they start here. We start with this conversation. We start with us hearing you, and we start with all your experience and all what you have brought in the last years and decades. Thank you very much.